Muy buenas tardes, continuando con la noticia, María Corina Machado envía nuevo mensaje en esta rueda de prensa en Estados Unidos. Entonces vamos a escuchar los nuevos avances que está brindando María Corina Machado, la líder opositora. Vamos entonces ya con este en vivo.
Seminar and of our leadership series, the role of the international community in the democratization of Venezuela. On July 28, 2024, Venezuelans voted to elect Edmundo González as the next president of the country. Following the election, tensions rose as the incumbent president, Nicolás Maduro, failed to recognize the result of the election and cracked down on protesters in the street. Over 2,400 people have been arrested as González fled the country and is now exiled in Spain. The next president is expected to assume office on January 10th, 2025. To discuss the current situation in Venezuela, the Georgetown Americas Institute is pleased to host María Corina Machado, the head of the Venezuelan opposition, for a conversation on the role of the international community to help democratization process in Venezuela. Joining me for this conversation is Georgetown Americas Institute Managing Director, Denise Yanovich. As you all know, María Corina Machado is a Venezuelan opposition leader, politician, and activist, known for her strong stance against the government of Nicolás Maduro. She has been a vocal critic of both Maduro and his predecessor, Hugo Chávez. Machado is the leader of the Vente Venezuela party, which advocates for a liberal democracy and free market reform. She gained prominence as the organizer of the Sumate organization, which played a significant role in organizing the 2004 recall referendum against Chávez. In 2010, she was elected to the National Assembly, but her term was cut short in 2014 when she was stripped of her seat for denouncing the government at the OAS. Since then, she has been a central figure in Venezuela's opposition. Machado has a degree in industrial engineer from Andrés Bello Catholic University and a master's degree in finance from Instituto de Estudios Superiores de Administración in Caracas. She was also part of Yale's University World Fellows Program in 2009. So we welcome María Corina. Let me tell the audience that the presentation will be in English. We have interpretation. For that, you just need to push on the interpretation button on the bottom of your screen. And at the end of the presentation that María Corina does, we will open up the session for a Q&A from the audience. Just send us your questions through the Q&A function also at the bottom of the screen. So again, María Corina, we're extremely happy to have you here at Georgetown, this time virtually, and we really hope to see you in person soon. And we also hope, that you, with the help of the international community, will be able to turn the situation around and that the election results will be fully recognized. And hopefully a new president will be inaugurated in Venezuela soon.
So it's my turn, or Denise will take it?
No, go ahead.
I go ahead. Well, I'm very grateful to Georgetown Americas Institute and to both of you, Alejandro and Denise. This is a unique opportunity to convene our message to all students and members of the Georgetown community about what's going on in Venezuela, why this is a unique opportunity, not only for our country, but for the region, for all those who love freedom and democracy around the world, and why it is so important as well for the American society as a whole, and what it would mean for the whole hemisphere to find a solution fast and hopefully peacefully to this devastation of our country that has taken place for over 25 years. So I will try to put, a little bit in context what has happened these years and why I insist this is a totally different and unique opportunity to move ahead. You all know that 25 years ago, and before, Venezuela was one of the richest, wealthiest countries in the region. And in 25 years, the system has destroyed not only our wealth. Today, Venezuela is even poorer than Haiti, but has destroyed every single democratic institution. Venezuela used to be a world player in energy. Today is a marginal player in the world in the energy sector. Venezuela used to be a place where citizens from all over the country would come to develop their life projects. And today, almost a third of our population has fled. So this situation has been, deteriorating as the regime gets tougher and tougher in terms of persecution, violations of human rights, and lately crimes against humanity. Perhaps other societies would have surrendered, but we have decided to fight. And we have done everything you can see in a textbook. I mean, we have huge, massive protests in the streets. We have had international pressure. We have had over 30 elections. And it hasn't worked because the regime had a lot of resources, a lot of international support, and no scruples whatsoever. But at the beginning of last year, only a year and a half ago, once again, the country was deemed hopeless. People thought there was nothing we could do before perhaps 2030, where the next election cycle would come. And we decided, people from different movements and parties, that we had a real chance, that the love for freedom was real and present in our country, and the will to fight as well. And we decided to go all over the country, tearing down the barriers the regime had built among us, dividing us, in rich and poor, black and white, right and left, those who stayed here, those who have left. It was a strategy to antagonize, to fracture society. And we were able to reach into, I think, the soul of the Venezuelan people. All of us have one strong longing. We want our kids back home. We want our families together. We want to live with dignity. We want to have, productive jobs and that we can be proud of and independent. So this feeling spread, and we had the opportunity to come up with an idea that was very, powerful. And it was to hold a primary election run by civil society without the tyranny getting involved whatsoever, so that Venezuelans felt they had the power to choose after 25 years and choose a leadership in which they could trust. It was a huge challenge. We had no money, we had no media, we had no support in the country. The regime put all kinds of obstacles, and we managed to organize this epic event. We were just a few days away from our first anniversary on October 22nd. The regime underestimated us. They thought people weren't going to be enthusiastic, wouldn't, risk themselves to participate. And almost 3 million Venezuelans did. It was massive. It was, for me, that point of inflection in which we all realized as a society the strength we had and the capacity to organize. And that started a roller coaster towards the electoral process. The first thing they did after I won the primary was they banned me from participating, and we had to choose an alternate candidate. The person I chose and we chose with the Unity platform and other parties, was a professor called Corina. She was denied to register as well. So finally we were able to have Edmundo Gonzalez, former diplomat, very well respected gentleman, be registered. But as you can imagine, the regime did everything to stop this movement from growing. And the thing I remember the most is all the time I heard it was impossible to do it. It was impossible to get country back on our feet again. It was impossible to have the primaries. It was impossible to reach the election with a single candidate. It was impossible to win. We decided to build a unique platform. Never before had it done, because we knew that the regime, of course, was planning to have, flagrant corruption and fraud. And we prepared. We had hundreds of thousands of people trained. We turned what they have done with this, all these electoral engineering into electoral intelligence. We used technology, databases to understand how they had moved people and robbed votes. We created a platform so strong that we could have people in every single polling station all along the day monitoring, and we would have permanent contact knowing what was going to happen. And as I said, this turned into an epic journey. We had no money, we had no resources for publicity, we had no flyers, printed flyers, we had no posters. Everything was done by the people. We carried these huge rallies where tens of thousands of people would go walking because there wasn't transportation, or the regime would cut the gas supply so that we wouldn't have, people could not move around in buses or motorcycles. And at the end the day came, and over 1 million volunteers displayed all over Venezuela. We managed to have our electoral monitors in 99.7% of the voting stations. The regime ordered them to be expelled, and the community organized helped them come back. And we managed to have the original copies of the tally sheets printed by the electoral machines in our witnesses' hands. They were collected. People risked their lives to get them to special security places where we had managed to have electricity, internet. We have like super sophisticated scanners, and we had them all digitalized around the clock in 24 hours. And we were able to put the proof of our victory on a super robust web page that had over 130 million clicks in the first 24 hours. We had huge attacks from hackers, of course, funded by the regime, but the world could see, and Venezuelans could see, the truth of our landslide victory. We won by 70-30 the votes, but if it had had minimum competitive conditions, if the Venezuelans abroad would have been allowed, it is the right to vote, we would have won at least 90-10. From then on, we've seen Maduro naked, totally delegitimized, deciding to unleash the worst repression wave we've seen in our history. Over 2,500 people have been detained. Most have been accused of terrorism. Over 150 were children, 220 women, just because they were in the streets next day peacefully protesting, or because they were walking in the streets and they found a picture of our campaign in their cell phones. Many of the electoral monitors were searched at their homes. They were taken away, and if they were not, members of their family were. Children have been hurt badly. And as I say, they have been forced to accuse themselves, to declare guilty if they want to have lower number of years in prison. This has gone to a point that the Inter-American Commission for Human Rights have labeled it as practices of state terrorism. And just this morning, the final report of the fact-finding missions of the United Nations stated that Maduro has committed crimes against humanity. So we are in a point in which Maduro is more isolated than ever. He has his entrenched within the top brass of the military, and everything he's got left is violence and repression. That's all he's got left. That is not a sign of strength. It is a sign of desperation, but it can be, and it is certainly very dangerous for those of us who have decided to stay here and fight and move ahead. So in order to have a transition to democracy, we need to reach a point in which Maduro has incentives to negotiate. And that requires to reach a point in which the cost of staying in power overweights the cost of living power. And we are not there yet. We need to move fast. We need to make them, the perpetrators, clear that those who have committed crimes against human rights will be held accountable, and that the resources that regime uses for repression and persecution that come from illicit activities will be blocked. It is much that the international community should do. We are almost 3 months away from July 28th, a day that has changed the history of Venezuela, and I would say of the whole region. We have to stop this journey from prolonging, because that would mean perhaps millions fleeing the country, going all through Central America. Many will reach the south border of the US. We don't want them to go. Actually, we want to have those who have left come back home and rebuild a wonderful and extraordinary nation. And in order to do that, we need you. We need all of you right now. We have turned Venezuela into a global cause. I think it is clear why Venezuela is a strategic conflict and priority that should be solved for the US national security as well as the rest of the hemisphere. We are committed to do that. We will never surrender. We've never been able to come this far. We are a united country with a legitimate leadership, with a unified opposition, with a robust strategy, and with the support of all freedom-loving citizens around the world. So this is a unique and decisive moment. And I ask you to trust us and to be part of the transformation of the history of Venezuela and our region. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Machado, for your intervention. While we receive questions through the Q&A, so people on Zoom, if you want to submit questions, please use the Q&A function. I want to start us off with the role of the international community. You mentioned that you need the international community to put pressure on Maduro to make the cost of remaining in power larger than the cost of leaving. When you think about the international community, who are the key players in your view? And what are the tools that are available for these key players to exert that pressure on the Maduro regime?
Well, it is important to understand that Maduro has turned Venezuela into a criminal hub of this hemisphere. Maduro has close ties to Russia, Iran, China, Syria, of course, Cuba, but also to irregular groups such as the Colombian guerrilla, the drug cartels, Islamic terrorist groups that have found in Venezuela all sorts of logistical services, going from using our financial sector in the past to getting Venezuelan passports. So this is an issue that concerns, well beyond our borders. Also, many of these actors actually support a regime in order to get destabilization in the region, and also pressure on the United States as well. So there's a wide range of tools in the diplomatic level, at the international justice level. It is also from an approach of law enforcement towards the irregular or criminal networks that operate in Venezuela. Certainly, there is issues that are to do with letting the regime know that that they will pay a high cost if they violate human rights, and that's why we believe the international justice and the International Criminal Court should act promptly as well. And finally, there is how to make those who support the regime understand that this is a system that will not be sustainable from the financial perspective. I am seeing, and this is truly important, a significant change in the position of non-conventional stakeholders, such as Venezuelan creditors, that used to be supporters of the Maduro regime, but that have finally understand that they will not get paid if Maduro stays in power. Now their incentives have moved on the contrary direction, and this is the kind of reactions and persuasions that we need to get on other actors and unconventional stakeholders that have interest in Venezuela as well.
Thanks for that, I mean, broad and detailed answer. So maybe thinking of a specific instrument that has been the instrument of choice of the US administration lately in international conflicts, that are economic sanctions. How do you see them? How far can they go? And is there anything on this universe of economic sanctions and actions that the international community needs to take as soon as possible, also to change this balance between benefits and costs, to actually sit the current government in the negotiation table?
Yeah, I would say that in that dimension, the regime uses these relations not only to tell their own people that they will have stable income, so not to worry, the world will look the other way around, regardless of what they do in terms of human rights and corruption and drug trafficking and so on, because they will never stop these energy relations from developing in Venezuela. But this has to be seen from other perspectives as well, Alejandro. I mean, let's talk about the serious, important companies, international energy companies that are operating right now in Venezuela. They have to realize that they are in partnership with the most corrupt company in the energy sector in the world, that has been accused of money laundering, even drug trafficking, PDVSA. They have to understand that they are violating Venezuelan constitution and legal framework. The contracts they have signed under La Ley Antibloqueo, I don't think there's a word for antibloqueo in English. You correct me if there is, because this is a concept hard to explain. Bloqueo is what the regime says the international community has done, blocking. So they came up with an unconstitutional law saying that the regime can do whatever they want with our legal framework, with total obscurity, without contracts being even seen by the National Assembly. So that's how these companies are working today in Venezuela. I mean, no one knows the nature of the contracts that have been signed. That violates our constitution. No one knows how much they're paying the regime, how much the government is getting out of their operations, and how much they are producing and even selling. So it is not only a matter of the international community understanding what these resources are used for, but I wonder what these stockholders and stakeholders of this company think about the goodwill and reputation of these organizations. So our message to them is, we want them here. We want them investing and making a lot of resources, a lot of money, big employment for Venezuela, but not like this. not like this, not under a regime that is corrupt and criminal and is violating, and they are violating Venezuelan laws.
Thank you. I'm receiving some questions from the Q&A, and one of them mentioned asked what you think of the position of Colombia and Brazil regarding the current situation in Venezuela. Their position has evolved. There has been pronunciations both by President Petro and President Lula da Silva, but what could they be doing differently to help your cause?
Well, I have to be very honest, and I have constant communication with most governments in the region and Europe, and I am very frank with them when I tell them that I was surprised how much they helped us reach the election, and they were eloquent and outspoken at moments in which we feared Maduro would stop the electoral process from moving forward. And when the election took place, believe me, where very few thought the governments of Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia would not recognize the results. And they were pretty clear in terms of that they will not do it unless they have the proofs, unless the regime published the tally sheets, which they haven't done almost 3 months ago, and they will never do, because if they do, they would give us the proofs of the fraud. We have the original tally sheets. Actually, today, the final report of our technical process was presented at the OAS in Washington, D.C., and the original tally sheets were presented today as well. So I think they have tried to get some communication with Maduro, and perhaps trying to save this possibility of interlocution. They have been prudent in terms of what they know, because everybody knows Edmundo González is the president-elect and that we won by a landslide. But I think clearly the strategy is not working, and I think they both, if they want to be useful to this process, and if they want to prevent the consequences of prolonging this tragedy in Venezuela within their own countries, they have to change the strategy, and they have to understand that until Maduro doesn't have real incentives to negotiate, he won't even answer the phones. And that's exactly what's happening right now.
So, I mean, we're getting so many questions. Let me group them maybe in 3 or 4. So the first one is, I mean, what role did Russia, Cuba play, I mean, helping Maduro during the election? And I mean, you already mentioned the role that they have been playing, keeping the regime in place. But I mean, if you can expand on their role in Venezuela in the last 10 years, and more specifically on their role during the election. Several students are asking what can they do to help Venezuela from outside. So what should be the role of the international youth in helping Venezuela? And something that, I mean, sometimes as Latin Americans, we see how other regions of the world really mobilize when they see a country in their region or so close to their regions really going through a very difficult situation. And I mean, the Venezuelan migration process has been one of the largest in the world. As you said, I mean, the economic crisis in Venezuela has been maybe the largest on record in any Western economy, except maybe Germany after the Second World War. And I think so far, I mean, societies in Latin America have not mobilized as much maybe as we should. So I think this question of the international youth, I mean, what else can they do? And there's another one that I know there's significant differences, but one student that some Western countries say that they don't want to repeat the strategy of 2019 and support an interim government. How is this time different? How can human rights violators be held accountable. So yeah, basically going back to 2019, differences between 2019. And I think I'll stop there and then let Denise, after your answer, group a bunch of the other questions.
Wow. Yeah, we could talk for hours. Let me try to be as fast as possible. Well, how to get human rights violators accountable? Make all the information public. I mean, the international justice has so much information that has not been disclosed yet. Let that be known, and then take action. I mean, it is inconceivable that, for instance, the European Union took away Elvis Amoroso, the president of the CNE, it's the sanction he had, in order for them to invite the European Union electoral mission to come to Venezuela and observe the elections. They invite them, then they take away the invitation, they commit this huge fraud, and the sanction has not been in place yet. So it's like, I mean, they're mocking the international community. After 3 months, the perpetrators, they all know who they are. United Nations have, explicitly explained the fact-finding missions, the crime they have committed, and they have been not been held accountable of it. We believe the International Criminal Court that has been for 10 years taking, care of Venezuela, in 5 years investigation, nothing has happened. So the message they send to Maduro is that the cost of repression is zero. You can kill people, you can disappear people, and nothing will happen to you. This has to stop immediately. And then I go to what youth could do. And sometimes you find in older generations that cynicism, that nothing will happen, there are double standards, people don't care about principles, it's only about interest. And that's not the case. I mean, what I've seen in Venezuela these last 2 years is part of that cynicism as well, that people do not care about abstract values. No, they do care. People want to hear the truth. They want to see people acting with decency, with dignity. And that's exactly what's happening in Venezuela right now. So I think that, students all over the world, I imagine getting them together and demanding their respective governments to act in concordance to what they say. So we need to move from, joint statements to joint actions. And we need to push governments and other actors in that direction. And finally, yes, a lot of people wonder what makes it different from the 2019 experience. And I think we have learned from every single one. We all have committed, mistakes, and we have had great successes in the past. And we have learned from it. That's why where we are right now. But we are a totally different country today. I mean, we have to understand Maduro and El Chavismo as a movement totally, fell apart. This is a country united as never before. And Maduro is isolated as he has never been in the international community before. And in addition to that, there are real cracks among the system. So this is a moment that we have never had in 25 years. And this is an opportunity that if we lose, we could probably won't have in many years as well. So this is a moment to act.
Thank you. I'll group other questions as well. There are several questions in regards to the U.S. election and the U.S. role specifically. One question is, what do you think a President Trump or a President Harris, how would that be different for Venezuela and for your strategy? And are you putting in place different strategies depending on who wins in 3 weeks the U.S. election? And another question is if you think Venezuela has not been such a prominent issue in the U.S. precisely because there's an election going on and people are just paying attention to what's going on in the U.S. and about the U.S.'s role in the oil sector, and sanctions specifically towards the oil section. So these are three questions around the U.S. and the election.
Well, look, I think there are very, very few issues, both domestically and international, in which today you will see agreement on both parties. And one of them is definitely Venezuela. And I mean it. I have permanent contact with senators that are Republican and Democrat, with representatives that are, Democrat and Republican. Almost all initiatives that come from Congress are bipartisan. And when you see the op-eds that have been published in the last hour, it's impressive, because you are seeing, coming together individuals that have had, or all the time have on all other issues opposite opinions. And it is because Venezuela is certainly an issue of national security, as I mentioned before. And I didn't answer the question about Russia. It is obvious that the relations between Maduro and Putin are closer and diverse. They go from, oil to arms, to intelligence, to financial sector, and so on. And also because the relation with Iran, which has been growing, as we know, and because of the way Maduro has, as I mentioned before, offered our country as a safe haven for many of these criminal groups, and also because, and that brings me to your third question, is Venezuela is the biggest opportunity in the Americas for the energy sector. No other country has the potential Venezuela has, not only because we have the larger oil reserves in the world, we are the 8th country in terms of gas reserves in the world, we are the 11th reservoir of fresh water in the world. So, and we are only 5 days away by ship to the Gulf of Mexico, and Venezuelan metrics of oil matches perfectly with the US refinery system. So it is inconceivable that from the energy perspective sector, it is not understood that as long as Maduro stays in power, there is no way Venezuela will be able to take advantage of that potential. Venezuela is today the last country globally, I'm talking the last country in terms of rule of law. Just last week, the World Index Project presented the list. I don't know if you saw it, 142 countries, Venezuela is in the last place. So imagine if you were sitting in the boards of some of these companies, if you were willing to invest billions of dollars in a sector that requires long-term to get payback in a country that, has expropriated and confiscated other oil companies. So I think the role to play in the energy sector for the US is huge. There's no other partner in the region as Venezuela. And we are ready to transform Venezuela from the criminal hub of the Americas in the energy hub of the Americans. And that can be done really fast. But first, we have to have a transition to democracy.
Yeah, there's one question on how confident are you on the International Criminal Court? And I mean, the delays that maybe they have had in addressing some of the issues that have been sent to them. Secondly, there's a question on if there's a role for any type of direct intervention for a given country, instead of trying to work through the international community, especially taking into consideration, I mean, that many of these efforts end up being counterproductive and being shown as a foreign influence in domestic matters. And then we're getting, I mean, many messages just showing, I mean, their support again, asking what they can do, what can the Georgetown community do, and yeah, I would say that basically the International Criminal Court issue direct intervention from a big country, I mean the US, Brazil, etc. And I mean just a lot of expressions of support.
Well, thank you. I believe that we have today a set of conditions, as I said before, that are unique, that could help us move into an orderly and peaceful transition. Never before we've had this, but it needs to have coordinated action of all actors. Of course, the United States is one of our main allies, but it is also Canada. We need Europe united acting, certain Asian countries, and definitely Latin America. And it is quite an achievement to have Latin American countries and governments and presidents such as Gabriel Boric and Javier Milei signing together statements in support of Venezuela. I mean, this is the kind of steps we have been taken that demonstrate that this goes well beyond a discussion at the ideological sphere. I mean, this has to do with the essence of freedom, respect for human rights, and human dignity. And this goes all along the let's say, the ideological spectrum. And we have tried to, and we have managed to maintain it in that dynamic. So I don't think it is, we require conventional direct intervention. What we need is intelligence action, but also prompt action, because we can lose momentum, we could see this window of opportunity be closed. And in that sense, I think it is a lot that civil society, and especially the academic community, that can do. In the US, it's super influential. And this is a moment we need to speak up. I mean, sometimes I understand that people will say, oh no, Venezuela again, another time. I mean, we have gone through this so many times, it's always that we are, close to a solution and then it's all lost. It's true, because we're facing a regime that is unprecedented. And we have learned a lot, and we have paid a huge cost in lives. But I think this is a moment in which we have to show the world that this is different and why it is different. We need to speak out, we need to tell the truth, and we need to believe in people. Because you know what, Alejandro, I've seen, during these last 2 years, all the experts, academics, scholars, analysts, pollsters, produce these very complex scenarios with 100 variables that were all interconnected, but there was one missing, always one variable missing: the people. People didn't care. They were not there. As if it wasn't important what the people felt and were willing to do. And what we saw in Venezuela is that people were willing to risk their own lives for this opportunity. And we are still willing to do it. It's the will to fight. So when you have a country united with will to fight, and you have this kind of international support, and we make Venezuela a global cause, the regime will understand that their days are counted and that it is in their best interest to sit down and negotiate. But we need to make them feel that every day that goes by, their situation is worse. So they have to move fast to negotiate and accept the terms and certainly the incentives and guarantees that we're willing to give.
To echo your message about the people in Venezuela, one of the things that really has felt different this time is the support of the people of Venezuela and their will to enforce the results of the elections. When you saw images of people toppling statues of Hugo Chavez, that was something that had never happened in Venezuela before, or I had never seen those images. And you would think, if you know that there's been fracture in the support to Maduro at the highest levels. He's done some reshuffling of his cabinet in the end of August. Just today, he announced some changes in the top tier of the military. Do you think these are just a demonstration of his power and that's a message he's sending? Or do you think this is due because there's a fracture in the top tiers of the support that he's receiving?
Well, as I said before, I have no doubt that middle and lower ranks in the police, in the military, even the judiciary, are certainly with us. I have no doubt. We wouldn't have been able to collect our intelligence if it wasn't because of the support and the cooperation we got from El Plan República, which is the operation organized by the military to protect the elections. And certainly we've seen, and in the last weeks, many military have been detained. There is no precise information, but information that has been publicly shared is that we're talking about over 400 or even more militaries that have been detained. And as you say, in the last hours, very important shifts have been done that involve people that have been loyal to the revolution, to the system for many years. I do not want to get into speculation because this is a serious issue, and I think no one has all the information, but I have no doubt that what we're seeing are signs of the weakness this system has. And many are delivered to their own people as a threat to their own people, because they fear this process of just dissolving. This makes it a very dangerous moment, certainly for all of us. I mean, there are priests that are being persecuted just because they held a mass for political prisoners in Venezuela. There is no one single journalist who is willing to speak out the truth of repression if they are here in Venezuela. And many that are abroad also silence themselves and censor themselves because they have family in Venezuela. And it is a moment in which the Maduro is trying to also to produce divisions among the opposition leadership, going against some and not the others, and offering all kind of deals. That will not happen. It is not working. It will not work this time, because we went through a process of legitimacy of what the Venezuelan people want as their leadership and as the strategy to follow up. So we really need you. We really need you speaking out and understanding that the tool that is the most damaging that this system have is not, lies or terror. It is when they get to demoralize our people, when they get to doubts in your soul that the destiny of this struggle is freedom and families together. I mean, we cannot let that happen. We have strength. What we have achieved is epic, and we are going to build on that until the end.
One question that just came in, and maybe, by reading it, I realized that maybe in the past, and as part of the international community, when I was at the International Monetary Fund and with some of your colleagues, maybe we worked too much on the day after and not so much on the day before and making the day after happen. But the question that comes is, deals with the day after. What would a transition to democracy in Venezuela look like? is there any model of democratic transition that you would take as an example? So yeah, the question is a little bit transitional justice, democratic transition, and eventually economic transition, as you mentioned, the rebuilding.
Yeah, well,
Venezuela.
We have been unique in the ways we've managed to deal with the many years before the D-Day, and of course we have to take care of the day before, as you say, but the day after has to be already thought about and worked about, because it will be a very unstable moment, and certainly there will be forces that will like it to not to succeed. So we need to understand, Alejandro, and you know that better than many, what it means to move ahead a process such as this when you have a financial crisis, an economical crisis, a security crisis, a humanitarian crisis, a national sovereignty crisis. You have an indebted country and not one single institution in place. I mean, I think this is unique. And I think the most important choice will be how to get the right people that are, that share values, that give trust to the Venezuelan people, that are knowledgeable, that are, representing different sectors, and that we know what to do. And we have, our plans on hand. We need to create trust in Venezuela so that we will have partners supporting this process, not only the multilaterals, but in very important corporations in different sectors that will be invited and attracted to invest in our country in order that we can create productive jobs in a very short term. So I have so much trust in our people. I mean, even though those that have left, that have had, great opportunities to get education and experience, I know many are willing to come back, in the health sector, in the education sector. And this creates an unique opportunity. How many societies in the history of humankind have to start from scratch? Really, we have the chance to design the incentives in the Venezuelan democratic institutions so that they create, solidarity, opportunities, productivity, excellence, and justice. So I think we have a unique opportunity. It will be a great challenge for Venezuelans. It will be a great challenge for many institutions, including the FMI, the IMF, at the moment.
Thank you all. We have 4 minutes left, and I would want to ask you one question and then leave you an opportunity after that to end with a message that you want to send to the people that have tuned in today. But my question is specifically of the Venezuelan diaspora. We know that an important portion of the Venezuelan people have chosen to migrate because of the lack of opportunities. What would you tell them and what their role can be in this moment? And then you can.
Well, actually, the Venezuelan migration crisis is the largest in the world today, larger than Ukraine, larger than Syria. Imagine what it would mean for your countries if more than a fourth, almost a third of your population would have left. In terms of the human talent, but also in terms of the pain of having families that are, separated and have no idea when they are going to be close again, because those who are here cannot leave, those who have left cannot come back. So our diaspora is formed by incredible people, super talented, that have gone to every single corner of the world, but that have, this close tie to Venezuela. And most of them want to come back, even though some of them have gone quite some years ago. And this, I know this for sure because I'm in contact with many organized groups all over the world, and that's why they tell me, you know, we're counting the hours to come back. I dream of starting a business. I dream to go back and see my family and so on. I ask you, how many causes today can get people out, mobilizing, organized in more than 500 cities the same day? Not many. Venezuela is one of them. We have done it recently since July 28th. And they are today, our diaspora, perhaps one of the most important forces we have. It is very difficult for Venezuelans to go out and protest in Venezuela at this moment. But outside, it is being done. We are censored. The social networks have been many interrupted, as well as the internet. But the information goes and flows because of them, not only around the world. They bring it back to their families. So they have been our voice. And I think at this moment, they are assuming new roles in order to get the important stakeholders, conventional and non-conventional, to do what they should at this moment. We are right now 87 days away of January the 10th. And when I'm asked, what could you do if Maduro stayed in power? I say, that's a wrong question. What can you do in order to have Edmundo Gonzalez sworn in as it was mandated by the Venezuelan popular will and votes? So this is a moment in which every one of us has to ask, what else can I do? And many things will come up, and great strength is building. So I ask you to trust, you know, what peoples and society can do when they decide to be free. And what they move is as strong as a love for their family and for freedom. And that's exactly what is going on in Venezuela right now. So please be your voices, please be active, please speak out, please dig into what's really happening, and please help us press all those that ought to act and go from joint statements to joint actions, because this is the time to do it. And I know we will meet soon here in a liberated country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to you. I mean, to making the time to speak with us and with the Georgetown community. And thanks for all the work you're doing. And we will be here to support your efforts in any way we can. So we hope we can host you again whenever you think it's important for us to open this channel. And we hope to see you in Washington.
Muy bien, hemos escuchado entonces esta entrevista a María Corina Machado, quien precisamente ha hablado acerca de cómo fue su proceso para las elecciones. No tenían apoyo, no le dejaban hacer campaña, no le dejaban aparecer en televisión, entre otros. También contó lo de la página web Resultados con Venezuela, que en el primer día tuvo 130 millones de clics, ¿no? Entonces los venezolanos pudieron ver lo que había sucedido aquel 28 de julio, ¿no? También habló acerca de esta ola represiva del régimen de Nicolás Maduro, quien tiene a 2.500 detenidos y acusados de terrorismo cuando simplemente salieron a protestar, ¿no? Salieron en esta marcha para que respeten el voto, ¿no? Entonces, entre estos acusados de terrorismo tienen a niños y adolescentes. Nunca en la historia había sido tan brutal ese régimen, ¿no? Entonces, lo que ha mencionado, recordemos que hace pocas horas Nicolás Maduro hizo un cambio precisamente dentro de la FAM, ¿no? Ha hablado precisamente que lo único que le queda a Nicolás Maduro es su cúpula de poder dentro de la FAM, ¿no? Es lo único que le queda. También habló y agradeció el apoyo de Boric y Milei, presidente de Chile y Argentina respectivamente. Por otro lado, lo que ha mencionado es que Nicolás Maduro, la estrategia que quiere utilizar es dividir a la oposición. Recordemos que en más de una ocasión, no solo Nicolás Maduro, sino su cúpula de poder, entre ellos tenemos a Tarek William Saab, y Diosdado Cabello, quienes hablan precisamente de que hay una enemistad entre María Corina Machado y Edmundo González Urrutia. Además, también recordemos que hace pocos días Nicolás Maduro había anunciado de que María Corina habría salido de Venezuela, ¿no? Entonces, recordemos que lo que busca el régimen es dividir a la oposición y también obviamente a la población venezolana, es lo que ha mencionado María Corina Machado. Por otro lado, ha pedido que para que este 10 de enero logre Edmundo González juramentar como presidente electo de Venezuela, lo que tienen que hacer precisamente es seguir presionando. Tu pueblo venezolano sigue presionando, tu comunidad internacional continúa haciéndolo, ¿no? De esta manera van a poder ayudar, según María Corina, a que el régimen salga el 10 de enero y entre un nuevo periodo para Venezuela en el que se acabe la dictadura. Es lo que ha mencionado María Corina Machado en esta rueda de prensa. Precisamente también ha hablado precisamente María Corina. Indicó que las compañías que están asociadas con la empresa más corrupta del sector enérgico en el mundo ha sido acusada por lavado de dinero y hasta narcotráfico, ¿no? La líder opositora María Corina Machado llamó a las transnacionales petroleras a dejar de operar bajo el régimen que es corrupto y criminal. Según dijo Machado, estas compañías que operan en el país tienen que darse cuenta que están asociadas con la empresa más corrupta del sector energético del mundo, que ha sido acusada de lavado de dinero hasta narcotráfico, ¿no? Entonces, nadie conoce la naturaleza de los contratos que se ha firmado, lo que viola nuestra constitución. Nadie sabe cuánto están pagando el régimen, cuánto está obteniendo el gobierno de sus operaciones, añadió, ¿no? Entonces, en esta conexión, horas después de que Nicolás Maduro habría dicho que María Corina salió del país. Este pedido de María Corina surge porque se han alzado voces exigiendo que estas empresas cesen sus actividades en Venezuela debido a la represión postelectoral desatada después de que Nicolás Maduro fuera proclamado vencedor en las elecciones del pasado 28 de julio entre denuncias de fraude, ¿no? Entonces, María Corina estima que se puede hacer una transición pacífica hacia la democracia y para conseguirlo Maduro necesita incentivos para negociar y aún no hemos llegado a ese punto. Recordemos que María Corina Machado vive ahora desde la clandestinidad, al tiempo que Edmundo González Urrutia está exiliado en España tras ser blanco de una orden de captura por investigación vinculada a denuncias de fraude en los comicios, ¿no? Pero vamos a escuchar el mensaje que ha enviado María Corina Machado. Ha enviado también mensajes precisamente, vamos a escuchar los mensajes que han enviado al sistema judicial. María Corina Machado envía mensaje al sistema judicial y vamos a escucharlo a continuación. Muy bien, entonces escuchemos este pronunciamiento de María Corina Machado.
Este mensaje es para ti que trabajas en el sistema de justicia de Venezuela, porque decidiste dedicar tu vida a ser garante y defensor de nuestra Constitución y nuestras leyes. Tú, que eres juez municipal de primera instancia o superior, que eres fiscal del Ministerio Público o defensor público, que eres secretario del tribunal, analista, asistente o alguacil. Tú fuiste parte de la gran gesta ciudadana del 28 de julio. Temblaste de emoción al ver cómo un pueblo salió a las calles, organizado y pacífico, a ejercer su derecho constitucional a elegir para vivir bien, para que su dignidad sea respetada, para traer a tu familia de regreso a casa. Tú sabes la verdad y por eso cuando cruzas la mirada con tus compañeros en los pasillos de los tribunales, comparten ese anhelo por el cambio que está por llegar. Tú sabes que las decisiones judiciales que toman unos pocos en contra de la Constitución y de la voluntad del pueblo venezolano son nulas. Sabes que esta tiranía decidió convertir el sistema judicial en un brazo represor, que le viola todos los derechos humanos a tus hermanos, que tiene miles de presos políticos, incluyendo niños y jóvenes torturados y abusados, así como a miles de presos por delitos comunes en condiciones infrahumanas. Todos merecen justicia y tú te debes a cada uno de ellos. Sabemos lo que estás sufriendo, al igual que tu familia. Yo sé que te amenazan, que te quieren callar la voz y doblegar tu conciencia. La mayor aberración de la tiranía es obligarte a violar la ley a ti, cuyo deber es administrarla. Porque frente a las prácticas de terrorismo de Estado, como lo ha calificado la CIDH, y los crímenes de lesa humanidad que ha denunciado las Naciones Unidas, ellos quieren arrastrarte a ti, que tú seas el culpable. Resiste, no te rindas. Venezuela te necesita hoy. Y óyeme bien, en la nueva Venezuela que está emergiendo, vamos a construir un sistema de justicia independiente, profesional y eficiente que va a ser un modelo para el mundo entero. Nunca más un cargo judicial dependerá de un contacto o de un favor. Te lo vas a ganar tú, ascenderás por tu mérito y no le deberás nada a nadie. Y por eso nadie te podrá remover si haces bien tu trabajo. Nunca más recibirás una llamada con una orden para ejecutar una arbitrariedad en contra de tu conciencia. Nunca más pasarás una noche sin dormir pensando en el niño preso o en su mamá desgarrada por una decisión criminal de un régimen criminal que te utilizó a ti y que ellos esconden su mano. Algunos de tus compañeros han sido despedidos por no cumplir las órdenes criminales del régimen, pues nos encargaremos de que sean reintegrados a sus cargos y distinguidos por su valentía. En esta nueva Venezuela, tú vas a estar bien formado y remunerado, como tu responsabilidad se lo merece, y tu familia va a vivir segura, y tus hijos y tus padres estarán muy orgullosos del servicio que le das al país. Llegó la hora de que todos los funcionarios judiciales sean el rostro del coraje y la dignidad, de que no acates órdenes que violan la Constitución y que defiendas a los tuyos. Ten la certeza que en esta nueva Venezuela no hay espacio para la venganza ni para la impunidad, que te necesitamos para hacer valer la justicia y transformar nuestro país. Tu futuro está aquí con nosotros. Nuestra lucha tiene un solo destino, la libertad y la justicia para Venezuela. Avanzamos de la mano de Dios hasta el final.
Este es uno de los primeros audios que envió, este es el último audio que ha enviado María Corina Machado a los trabajadores del sistema judicial, pero eso no es todo, pues día a día ha estado enviando audios a diferentes miembros del sistema en Venezuela, pero vamos a escuchar también el mensaje a los militares que brindó María Corina
Tú eres una
Machado.
buena persona y quieres surgir y que tu familia pueda vivir bien. Decidiste ser militar para servir a tu país. Nicolás Maduro ya es pasado y tú lo sabes. ¿Qué sentido tiene entregar tu carrera, tu reputación, por sostener un gobierno que ya no tiene futuro? Son más de 25 años de promesas revolucionarias que nunca se hicieron realidad. Tus ingresos han caído a un mínimo insostenible. ¿Cuántos familiares y compañeros han tenido que irse del país? ¿Cuántas veces personas que te quieren te reclaman por seguir apoyando a un tirano que nos ha hecho tanto daño a todos? Sabemos que todos los días tratan de asustarte diciéndote que cuando los demócratas lleguemos al poder iremos contra la Fuerza Armada Nacional y contra ti, que tú no tienes futuro con nosotros. Esto es falso. Venezuela necesita a todos sus hijos y nosotros contamos contigo para defenderla, reconstruirla y hacerla grande, próspera y segura. Te necesitamos a ti para enfrentar las verdaderas amenazas que existen contra nuestra patria, que no son nosotros, los ciudadanos, sino que son esos grupos irregulares y criminales que la están explotando y a su paso dejan una estela de hambre, de pobreza y de miedo. El que no la debe, no la teme. Tú sabes bien que la primera obediencia debida de un soldado es hacer respetar la soberanía popular. Y tú sabes la verdad de lo ocurrido el 28 de julio, porque estuviste allí y viste un pueblo unido, pacífico y esperanzado en las calles. Todo el mundo sabe que el pueblo de Venezuela derrotó ampliamente a Maduro. Lo hicimos en condiciones muy difíciles, enfrentando persecución y arbitrariedades, pero lo hicimos con disciplina, inteligencia y mucho amor. Amor a nuestros hijos, amor a la libertad y amor a nuestra tierra, Venezuela. Luego de casi 3 meses, ni el CNE, ni el TCJ, ni Maduro han podido mostrar una sola prueba de que ganaron la elección, porque la perdieron. La vuelta a la democracia no solo implica la vigencia de la justicia y de la libertad, la reunificación de nuestras familias. También representa la reinstitucionalización y la profesionalización de nuestras Fuerzas Armadas y policiales. Nuestros ciudadanos militares deben estar bien formados, bien dotados y bien remunerados para que puedan hacer bien su trabajo. Tu familia debe estar protegida con seguridad social, educación y atención médica de primera calidad. Ciudadano militar, Venezuela te necesita y debe servirle. Sé protagonista de la historia que está gestando la nueva república. No avales un régimen que va de salida. Escucha tu conciencia y el llamado de los tuyos. El cambio ya arrancó y es indetenible. Tu futuro está con nosotros. Vamos juntos, de la mano de Dios hasta el final.
Hemos escuchado el mensaje a los ciudadanos militares y finalmente envió también a los maestros y profesores. Vamos a escuchar su mensaje.
Queridos maestros venezolanos, ustedes representan la gran esperanza para el cambio profundo que Venezuela necesita con urgencia. Ustedes, los docentes, han defendido a nuestros niños y jóvenes durante estos años de oscuridad, de mentira y violencia. Los han protegido de un ataque sistemático, de un sistema que pretendió cambiar nuestra historia. Aún con sueldos de hambre, maestros venezolanos, ustedes representan la gran esperanza para el cambio profundo que Venezuela necesita con urgencia. Ustedes, los docentes, han defendido a nuestros niños y jóvenes durante estos años de oscuridad, de mentira y violencia. Los han protegido de un ataque sistemático, de un sistema que pretendió cambiar nuestra historia, destruir nuestros símbolos e invertir nuestros valores, que buscaba aniquilar esa relación entre el esfuerzo y el logro, acabar con la educación como esa palanca de superación individual y el valor del trabajo productivo y dignificante. Por eso ustedes han sufrido el embate de un régimen que sabe que sin educación no hay libertad. Aún con sueldos de hambre, sin seguridad social, ustedes, nuestros maestros y profesores, se han mantenido al frente de esta lucha con una infinita vocación y entrega. Yo sé que muchos de ustedes sacaron de su propio bolsillo para llevar algunos materiales a sus aulas o incluso compartieron su comida con sus alumnos. Ustedes han sido testigos de cómo colapsa la infraestructura educativa, de cómo nuestros niños van a clases sin la alimentación o la vestimenta indispensable, sin los instrumentos básicos para poder formarlos. En esas condiciones extremas, ustedes han sido el soporte emocional y espiritual de nuestros muchachos y de sus padres. El maestro ha sido siempre un baluarte en Venezuela, un referente ético, un ejemplo a seguir. Todos tenemos un maestro que marcó nuestras vidas para siempre y así va a seguir siendo. Hoy Venezuela los necesita, firmes, decididos, organizados, sembrando esperanza y confianza en sus salones de clase y en todas sus comunidades. En esta nueva Venezuela que emerge, los docentes van a ser la columna vertebral de la sociedad, bien formados y remunerados, con seguridad social como se merecen, dada la inmensa responsabilidad que tienen en una sociedad libre y democrática. Ser maestro será el mayor honor y responsabilidad de una sociedad basada en el conocimiento, en la innovación y en el mérito. No lo duden, vamos a construir el mejor sistema de educación pública del mundo. Hoy les hago llegar mi profunda admiración y cariño. Venezuela los necesita organizados y activos. Ustedes fueron decisivos en la inmensa victoria del 28 de julio. En cada comunidad, pueblito y ciudad que recorrimos, ahí estaban ustedes, las maestras y los docentes en la primera fila. Y hoy lo siguen siendo en esta etapa de la lucha para hacer valer la verdad, esa verdad histórica recogida en cada acta de votación, que son las actas de nuestra nueva independencia. Maestros, profesores, docentes de Venezuela, levanten sus frentes y sus voces y sobre todo siéntanse muy orgullosos de su vocación. Venezuela los necesita a cada uno de ustedes en esta hora decisiva. Y prepárense, porque en la Venezuela libre que llega pronto, ustedes serán protagonistas de la construcción de ese sistema de educación pública de calidad mundial, porque vamos a ser la envidia del planeta. Nuestros jóvenes podrán competir con cualquier otro muchacho de otro país. Los formaremos con las destrezas, conocimientos y valores más avanzados. Tendremos una sociedad trilingüe. Hablarán castellano, inglés y el lenguaje digital para que nuestros chamos puedan surgir y ser dueños de su futuro. Este futuro está cerca. De la mano de Dios, vamos hasta el final.
Muy bien, hemos escuchado estos mensajes que ha enviado María Corina Machado. A diario ha estado enviando a diferentes sectores. Vamos a comenzar con el último. Ha enviado mensaje precisamente a los trabajadores del sistema judicial. Ya lo hemos escuchado, pero vamos a ver el mensaje que colocó en ese video. Mensaje a los trabajadores del sistema judicial. Tú fuiste parte de la gran gesta ciudadana del 28 de julio. Tú sabes la verdad. Nosotros sabemos lo que estás sufriendo, al igual que tu familia. Sé que te persiguen y amenazan, que te quieren callar la voz y doblegar tu conciencia. Es momento de que tú y todos los funcionarios judiciales sean el rostro del coraje y la dignidad, que no acates órdenes que violan la Constitución y las leyes. Tu futuro está aquí con nosotros. Asimismo, también María Corina envió mensaje a los ciudadanos militares. A ti, que decidiste servir a tu patria como soldado. A ti, que anhelas vivir con dignidad y seguridad para tu familia. A ti, que sabes que tu deber es hacer respetar la soberanía popular y fuiste testigo de su mandato el 28 de julio, a ti, Venezuela te necesita hoy. Y uno de los primeros mensajes que envió precisamente fue a aquellos profesores y maestros. Mi mensaje a los maestros y profesores de Venezuela, que son un baluarte en nuestra lucha. Levanten con orgullo su frente y sus voces. Los necesitamos. Venezuela será libre. Avanzamos de la mano de Dios hasta el final. Estos son los mensajes que ha enviado día tras día María Corina Machado. pidió a los funcionarios del Poder Judicial de Venezuela que desacaten las órdenes que estarían violando la Constitución del país y ha denunciado que el gobierno ha convertido el sistema judicial en un brazo represor. Es momento de que tú y todos los funcionarios judiciales sean el rostro del coraje y la dignidad, que no acates las órdenes que violan la Constitución y las leyes, declaró en este mensaje publicado en su red oficial, ¿no? Asegura que estos trabajadores conocen la verdad de las elecciones presidenciales del 28 de julio. No solo ellos, sino también María Corina pidió a las Fuerzas Armadas Nacional Bolivariana FAM no avalar a un régimen que va de salida en referencia al gobierno de Nicolás Maduro, quien, según María Corina, el pueblo derrotó ampliamente en los comicios del 28 de julio. Tú sabes bien que la primera obediencia debida de un soldado es hacer respetar la soberanía popular. Tú sabes la verdad de lo ocurrido el 28 de julio porque estuviste ahí y viste a un pueblo unido y pacífico y esperanzado en las calles, dijo María Corina en este audio publicado en su red oficial. Finalmente, el primer mensaje que envió fue a los maestros, a quienes dijo que serán protagonistas de un nuevo sistema educativo, a los maestros y profesores venezolanos, en el que los llama a estar preparados para ser protagonistas de lo que será un nuevo sistema educativo de excelencia. Esto una vez se realice la transición del gobierno. Hoy Venezuela los necesita firmes, decididos, organizados, sembrando esperanza y confianza en sus salones de clase y en todas sus comunidades. En esta nueva Venezuela que emerge, los docentes van a ser la columna vertebral de la sociedad, mencionó María Corina Machado, ¿no? También hemos visto ya la rueda de prensa completa en donde ha hablado precisamente todo lo que sucedió aquel 28 de julio, también previo cómo fue la pre-campaña y también precisamente acusó a Nicolás Maduro de querer precisamente dividir a la oposición y dividir también a los ciudadanos. Recordemos que Nicolás Maduro ha asegurado de que María Corina Machado no se encuentra en Venezuela, que habría fugado del país, ¿no? Entonces tenemos también una encuesta aquí en el canal. Vamos a finalizar la encuesta. ¿Apoyas a María Corina Machado? Un sí, un 93%, no un 6%. Esta encuesta fue completada con 1.900 votos. Recuerden que hay un margen de error de 1%. Esta encuesta es realizada en el búnker digital. Es una encuesta interna del canal. Muchas gracias a todos los que se conectaron. Vamos a continuar con otro en vivo muy importante. ¿Qué ha pasado? Nicolás Maduro asegura que juramentará como presidente de Venezuela el 10 de enero. Vámonos con estas declaraciones de Nicolás Maduro Moros. Entonces nos vamos al siguiente en vivo. Muchas gracias a todos los que se conectaron. Recuerden, somos el Búnker Digital, tu lugar seguro de información. Vamos a escuchar estas declaraciones de Nicolás Maduro, quien advierte que seguirá en el poder el próximo 10 de enero y será juramentado como presidente de Venezuela. Nos vamos al siguiente en vivo.